Hello and welcome to another episode of the Speak the Truth podcast. I'm your host, Matt Tardio. Today we're going to be talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and who is right, who is wrong, who to even believe these days, and why everything, how did we get to this point? When peace in the Middle East quite literally means we need the Israelis and the Palestinians to stop killing each other. Well, I've got all those answers for you and more coming up on today's video. Now, I know for some people, when they see images and videos like this, it's hard for them to believe that Israel could possibly be on the right side of history, especially when those types of videos are coupled up with these types. I mean, mass migrations of people inside of Gaza, like at the start of Israel's campaign with all of the warnings that came out, they just started picking up and moving. And then we started to see these images. That war footage started to come out, and then we started to see more stuff until eventually we got to this point where it looked like pretty much the entirety of Gaza was just wiped out and leveled. I mean, some of the freaking imagery and photography coming out of there is insane. It looks like I don't know, like how Germany should have been treated after World War II, with everything just being what appears to be leveled. Now that adds just to more confusion about what's taking place over there, because following the horrific attacks from October 7th, we saw videos like this one right here.
People say that there were no babies that were murdered, but here, your community lost a 9-month-old baby.
My neighbors, 20 meters from my house, there was a family that the father and the baby was murdered, brutally murdered.
Kibbutz Be'eri was attacked on October 7th. The slaughter that happened here is still very apparent. The community of Be'eri was moved to another location because the kibbutz is burnt and broken. But today, they're all back here to remember the ones that they...
Now, at least the videos from the IDF bombing Gaza and conducting combat operations are safe for watch on YouTube. Unfortunately, I can't show you everything that happened on October 7th and how just ridiculously brutal it really was. But I can show you images like these that came out of a school in Kibbutz Be'eri. Here you can see where there is just great, like pixelated out ground because there's a bloody drag mark on the floor inside of this kindergarten. Again, the entire thing is wrecked. Here we see more blood left behind inside of this kindergarten. Children's bicycles with bullet holes riddling the walls. And more blurred out images of bodies inside of a kindergarten. The amount of editing it would take to actually be able to make all of these images and videos safe for watch is beyond my capability, to be perfectly honest with you. So it gets really hard to start figuring out who's right and who's wrong. On one side, you have Hamas that conducted this mad attack on October 7th, massacring all these Israeli civilians and taking babies as young as 9-month-old hostage. And then on the flip side, you see what's taking place over inside of Gaza, now inside of southern Lebanon and in the West Bank. And you wonder, is Israel a genocidal maniac terrorist regime? Israel's been in existence ever since 1948, and it was formally recognized by the UN in 1949. But what the heck happened before that? Because all of the Palestinians believe that Israel is illegally occupying all of their sovereign territory. How did they come to that conclusion? I'm sure if you're looking this far, you've probably heard things like the British Mandate, the Ottoman Empire, and several other things. But it's just, I'm going to make this as simple for you as humanly possible. In this article from the Armstrong Institute of Biblical Archaeology, they talk about the Merneptah stele. It proves Israel's existence from 30 to 100 years ago in the land of present-day Israel. It's the oldest non-biblical artifact ever discovered inside of Israel that talks about its existence. So what is it, and how do we know that Israel was there beforehand? Well, this kind of takes away all of the religious context that everybody likes to throw out there. And what it does is it establishes that the Jewish people were there and that it wasn't just Jewish people being nomads, but that they actually had a established government, i.e. it was their land. It's an engraved stone slab which describes the pharaoh Merneptah's military victories in 1207 BCE. The stele itself is dated to the year 1205 BCE. British archaeologists ended up discovering this in 1896 in Thebes. It contains the earliest undisputed extra-biblical reference to date of Israel. I'll have this linked down in the description for you so you could go read about it. Now, to get into modern day Israel and the history of it, we have to go back in time yet again. We're going to travel back all the way to 68 BCE. This is the documented time in which the Jews lost the land to the Romans. This is commonly referred to as the Siege of Jerusalem, and as you can see here from Britannica, it documents in about 70 or 68 BCE, the Romans ended up conquering the land of Israel, and it was conquered underneath the Roman general Pompey. Again, that information will be linked in the description below. So if the Jews have been there for 3,000 years and the Romans took it from them right before the coming of Christ, then why would the Muslims lay claim to it? Well, a quick internet search about the faith of Islam will tell you that the Prophet Muhammad is believed to have ascended into heaven at the Temple Mount, or the present-day Al-Aqsa Mosque. Now, why is that important? And this is a little bit disputed because that is the exact moment in time in which the Muslims decided to take interest over it. Now, the Islamic prophet Muhammad ended up coming to be at the end of the 6th century, and he ended up dying in 632. Following the death of him, emerged the Rashidun Caliphate. Now, this comes from the World History Encyclopedia. The Rashidun Caliphate then ended up, I think it was like 6 years later in 638, ended up taking over the land of Israel. They conquered it. Now, this was the first of 4 Muslim rulings that took over that country, eventually turning into the Ottoman Empire, which stayed in existence until 1917 when the British conquered it during World War I, turning it into the British Mandate of Palestine. Now, during that time period, the Palestinians were actually issued passports, but as you can see on this one on the right, it says British passport. Now, these are what actual passports inside of Palestine look like. These other ones that you see out here are often fake and or AI generated, but you can see, and you could do your own research on this, that the Brits ended up issuing out passports for Palestine because after 1917, it was British territory. That would take us all the way up to World War II. And following World War II, people were concerned with what was happening to the Jewish people because of the Holocaust. The Jews, after the caliphs started taking over the land of Israel, predominantly spread out across Europe and several other locations looking for a home, but they ended up being persecuted about 99% of the time, including all the way up and through the Holocaust. Because of that, the UN was looking for a way to give the Jews a safe place to go. That leads us back to Britannica, where we start talking about UN Resolution 181, often referred to as the Partition Plan, from all the way back in 1947. This partition plan gave about 52% of the land to the present-day Israelis, or back then the Jews, and 48% of the land to the Arabs, or what you would call the present-day Palestinians. Now, the Israelis actually accepted this deal in November when it was actually formally adopted by the UN. Israel said, "We accept." The Arabs said no. And in May of 1948, the Israelis declared their independence and sovereignty as a nation. Unfortunately, the Palestinians didn't see it that way, so they attacked. Now, as you can see on this original partition plan from 1947, everything in blue was to be the Jewish state. Everything in red was supposed to go to the Arabs, and the yellow was supposed to be an international zone because of the religious significance it holds to several different religions. This is the plan that Israel accepted. Now, following the war from 1948, the Israelis just kind of kept to themselves up into about 1967, when they felt that they were about to come under attack again from several different countries, including Jordan, Egypt, and Syria. Due to this, Israel actually launched a preemptive attack. This is a picture from June of 1967 of Israeli troops entering into Gaza. Now, it was during this time frame that the Israelis actually ended up taking over that land. Now, during the Six-Day War, Israel also took over the Sinai Peninsula and the Golan Heights, and after just a couple years, they ended up giving it back to Egypt. That is the Sinai Peninsula anyways. The Golan Heights never went back to Syria, and the West Bank never went to Jordan. Now, it's important to remember that this war kicked off in 1967, almost 20 years after the British mandate had ended and the UN adopted the resolution for the partition plan, which the Israelis accepted. During the Six-Day War, Israel actually took a good chunk of the Sinai Peninsula, and in about 1978, they ended up giving it back to the Egyptians. However, the Golan Heights and the West Bank remained under Israeli control. It seemed neither Jordan nor Syria wanted the lands back. And the Palestinian people wanted their own independent state, apart from Jordan, apart from Syria, apart from Egypt. Now, following the Six-Day War, Israel actually did build settlements over inside of Gaza and all of that. And, oh, by the way, and in the West Bank, but all of that ended up leading to a war that took place in 2005. Following that war, Israel agreed and backed out all of its settlements, including 9,000 people. And about 1.3 million Palestinians were living in the land in 2005. Today, the number is well over 2 million. Now, this article that is currently up on your screen from the United States Institute of Peace, titled Palestinian Politics and Timelines Since 2006 Election, talks about what happened after Israel had completely pulled out of Gaza and removed all of their settlements. The population inside of Gaza went from over 1 million to over 2 million, doubling in size. And during that time frame, Israel and the Palestinian people inside of Gaza actually had numerous conflicts, one in 2012 and one in 2014. Israel's always saying that it's because of self-defense, because the Palestinians want to continue to attack them. In 2017, Hamas published this document titled A Document of General Principles and Policies. This is what's commonly referred to as the Hamas Charter. And in it, they lay out their beliefs and goals. And those beliefs and goals, including taking over all of Palestine, which is all-encompassing of Israel. They say, and I quote, "Palestine is an Arab Islamic land." Now, that's kind of interesting because they also make several religious references throughout this document. As a matter of fact, this document's got, how many paragraphs? 42 paragraphs. Now, the only paragraph in this document that says they're willing to concede to anything is paragraph 20, where they state, Hamas believes that no part of the land of Palestine shall be compromised or conceded, irrespective of the causes, the circumstances, and the pressure, and no matter how long the occupation lasts. Hamas rejects any alternative to the full and complete liberation of Palestine from the river to the sea. However, without compromising its rejection of the Zionist entity and without relinquishing any Palestinian rights, Hamas considers the establishment of a fully sovereign and independent Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital along the lines of the 4th of June, 1967, with the return of the refugees and the displaced to their homes from which they were expelled to be a formula of national consensus. So they don't necessarily even agree to the borders that were established prior to 1967. They said they'll consider it. But they also double down in the same paragraph saying that they're not going to accept anything other than a full and sovereign Palestinian state from the river to the sea. So I don't understand how people think that Hamas won't do it, especially when they have quotes within this, such as it is their divine right to the land of Palestine, and that they can accomplish that divine right by, quote, any means and methods, which would take you back to October 7th. They think that it's their divine right to do that. So if Israel ends up pulling out of Gaza today, would there be peace? Well, the answer is simple. No, not as long as Hamas exists and this extremist ideology amongst the people exists. And it does, and it's not going to go anywhere. And the problem is that even if Israel pulls out, they are just going to regroup. The people inside of Gaza and the West Bank believe that they have the sovereign divine right to the territory of Israel, despite the fact that Muhammad didn't come around till over 500 years after Christ, and the Jewish people had been living there for over 3,000 years now. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Speak the Truth podcast. Peace, love, happiness, and God bless. I'm out of here.